Hi, welcome to the second video in our tutorial series HTML for Beginners. In this video, we're going to go through a few things about the head element that we mentioned in the last video. And I'm also going to show you a few things with as far as spacing and line breaks and things like that. Really important things that you'll need to know when you're writing HTML. And by line break, I just mean hitting enter on your keyboard, okay, when you're writing the HTML in your text editor. So if I press enter, I'm just adding a bunch of line breaks. And before we get to that, though, I just wanted to kind of recap on the last video. So in the last video, we just learned a few elements: the HTML element, the head element, and the body element. And again, this is going to be your general structure for every website you make, every web page you make. And just know that some elements have things that go inside of them. So the HTML element has the head and body inside. And the reason why it's inside is because it's between the opening tag here and the closing tag down here. And just one more thing, your web page is always going to generally start with the HTML opening tag, and it's generally always going to end with the HTML closing tag. One of the things we can put in the head element is a title, and I'm just going to do that right now, title, and we'll say my new web page. And I actually made a video and I kind of messed up, so my example is not going to be that great, but if I reload the page here, just kind of watch what happens in this tab at the top of the browser. So if I reload this, because I didn't save it. I made this whole video and then somebody called and it kind of messed up my whole video. So sorry about that. But if I reload that, there's the hello world. And if you noticed up here in the tab, it changed. Okay, it says my new web page. And that's kind of what the title element does. It not only changes your tab, but when you do submit your site to Google so people can find it, Google might use that title element to kind of give your website a title. Okay, so right here, Notepad++ free download and software reviews, that could be the title, but Google doesn't have to use the title. They can actually use whatever they want in your web page. So I guess my point is don't count on Google using that. Just kind of know that it is important to have a title within your head element because Google might use it. Okay, and it also changes that tab in the top of your browser. It changes that tab to kind of give your web page a title, and that's if you notice, that's outside the white area that we kind of said was the body in your browser, and it's just that's why it's kind of in the head, is because it's not in the body. And the other thing I wanted to mention in this video is the body. I shouldn't say the body. The way your browser reads HTML, it doesn't really care about spacing and line breaks and things like that. So I just want to illustrate that. If I added a bunch of space between hello and world, something like that, and I saved that and reload, you can see nothing happened, right? And the reason is because your browser only cares about that first space. It just cares about that first space just to separate words, just to differentiate, hello and world are separate words. Anything other than that, it's not going to care about. So if I could even go down here and save that and reload, and it's still not going to change anything, okay? Because it still only cares about that first space, and then everything else between there, it just ignores. So if you did want to have text like this on your web page, you can definitely do that, but you would just need to do a little more within your HTML, and I'll show you a few ways of kind of manipulating text just to start. And later on, we're going to be using CSS to really get our web pages to look exactly how we want. But for now, I just want to show you a few more elements that we can use for this. And the most basic one would be the break tag. Looks just like this. So, and I could even move that down to the next line if I want, but I don't have to. I could just leave it on the same line, and I'll save that and reload. And now you can see it just went down to the next line. Okay. And you might have noticed the break tag doesn't have a closing tag like all of our other elements did. So it doesn't look like this, right? Because the reason, if you think about it, is nothing goes inside the break tag, right? Because that's the only reason we had an opening tag here and a closing tag, is because stuff goes inside the body, stuff goes inside the head, stuff goes inside the title. That's why it has an opening component and a closing component. The break tag, just think of it like a standalone, just a standalone tag. That's all it is. It's just the break. And there are going to be a few elements that you learn that are like that. I mean, an image is another one. When we start adding images to our web page, it doesn't have a closing element, and because nothing goes inside it except for the actual image name, but that's actually part of the tag, which that might not make sense at all to you right now, but it will later. So the only thing to really take away from that is just know that some elements don't have a closing tag, and there's only a few of them. It's not really that hard to remember. So but yeah, just kind of know that for now. The next way we could have done this is we could have added another element like a header. H1, it just means header 1, which is the largest header we can use. And I'll save that and then reload. And now you can see the not only did it make our text a lot larger, but it gave us some space underneath it, because it kind of considers this a header, and then everything else is just underneath, under the header. So that's another way we can do it. And H1 is the largest header, and it goes all the way to H6 would be the smallest. And you can do any number in between, H2, H3, H4, H5. The only thing to know is that you have to match the opening tag with the closing tag. Okay, so save that and reload. And there's our smallest header size. It still kind of made it bold and gave us that space, but now it's smaller. And I'll just delete this. And the other way we could do this is I'll actually just drop it down to the next line, and we could add a paragraph tag, which is just the P. And oops, close it off there. And if I save that and reload, now it still gave us that space between hello and world, but it kind of dropped it down not only to the next line, but a little further, because it considers that a new paragraph. So I can add that paragraph and then another paragraph. This is more paragraphs. And I'll save that and reload. And I hope that kind of makes sense, because if you have a bunch of content on your site, like an article or something, each paragraph is going to be encapsulated within the paragraph opening and closing tag. And the way to make a new paragraph is just to make a new paragraph element and then put your content inside it. I'm just going to delete that for now. And the last thing I want to get into in this video is I want to mention CSS a little bit. I know this is an HTML tutorial, but I just kind of want to explain what CSS is and kind of how it relates to HTML. You might have heard of CSS before, and you might have seen something like HTML, CSS. Nowadays, HTML and CSS are kind of go hand in hand a lot more than they used to. People that know HTML generally also know CSS, and vice versa. It's not like you're only going to learn HTML and then you can kind of go make really cool websites, because your websites are going to look like our sample. Okay, it's going to look like really basic stuff from like the early 90s that I don't think a lot of people would be that interested in looking at. So and that's what CSS is for, is to get things the way we want it to look, to get our text. We could change the font, we could change the color, we could change the positioning, we can change all kinds of stuff with CSS. In the old days, there were a lot of things in HTML you can do to change things, but people generally don't use that anymore. So I don't even see any purpose for you to learn about it. I mean, I can go, if I had the hello world, I can actually add HTML. Like I can go center, put it within a center element, which is not really recommended, but I mean, I could do that. And this would be an example of me kind of positioning my text with HTML. So now it's in the center, but there's really no point in learning tags like this center, because they're kind of depreciated, and you can get much better results with CSS that you'll have a lot more control over. And yeah, so that was my only point with that. So when we're learning HTML, just think of it as the bare structure of your web page. And then once you have the structure the way you want it, then you go back with the CSS and make everything pretty. Okay, you make it all the way you want it, and so I just wanted to mention that so you kind of understand where CSS kind of fits in with HTML. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and check out my website, zlinko.com. Thanks. Bye-bye.